Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. This is another episode of Wireframe brought to you by Design Systems House. I'm your host, Dato, and today we're going to be talking about the place of craft. And to do that today, I have a very special guest with me. I have Caroline Horn. Caroline, it's so good to see you. Thank you for joining me today on the show. And let the people know who you are over there before we get started and what you're doing out there.
Yeah, awesome. Super excited to be here and chat with you, especially
Are
about
you
craft.
muted?
I'm not.
What happened?
Uh-oh.
Why don't I hear you? Oh, wait. Sorry, that was me. Continue.
Yeah, just super excited to be here. Happy to chat with you about craft. I have been in the design systems space for quite a while here, even before design systems was like a quote unquote thing. I mean, it was just always the way that I worked. I'm a design engineer. I've always been designing in browser, designing with code, but design systems has been my passion since my previous job at Elastic, where we actually had an open source library. And now I'm working at Ramp in FinTech. It's almost 4 years now at Ramp. And yeah, don't really have anything to plug, but you can go to my website if you want to see kind of the stuff, the libraries that I'm working on at curiouschaos.com. That's me.
Cool. Thanks. I'm going to share something actually. So Caroline and I've actually been talking for a little while, very recently. She visited New York actually just last week. We had an opportunity to have some brunch, but this is something that about Caroline that she doesn't know that I'm going to tell her right now live.
Oh boy.
So basically years ago in the design system Slack, I was, kind of, getting my feel around the Slack and the people that were there. And one of the things that I remember very specifically was your avatar, which you have sunglasses on, and it's kind of like very, I guess, it's got character, I guess, is the best way I could say about it. And the reason why I remember it in particular is because every time that you would post something in that Slack channel or in the Slack workspace, it was so like technical and like design and it was like there was so much like of the craft that we do, on theme, I guess, of the craft that we do in design engineering. I was like, Caroline is at such a higher level that I feel like much of the other space has been in the questions that she was asking, that I'm like, what is Caroline going to ask next? Like, I need to follow this thread. And even like in me, like responding to some of those conversations, the responses that you would have would be so thoughtful and really think about the edge cases. And I was just like, this person is someone that I want to follow. So I know that we didn't talk about that. I wanted to say that very publicly.
Now I'm blushing.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn up the red in the channel for the monitor over here. But I just want the folks at home to know that I really do respect the work that you've done over the years, and I would have loved to, of course, see more public work out of you. I believe that you've been really down in the weeds over there at Ramp and trying to make some stuff happen. And I'm really, of course, again, glad to have you on the show so that we can nerd out about some stuff and dive into some things. So again, thank you for being a part of the community. I really do appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's get into the topic at hand, which is craft. And I want to kind of preface this by letting the audience know the reason that kind of we're having this conversation is from the question, which is Ben Callahan's project, where he had co-host Tony Ann, who we're going to try to get on this show at some point. She's been actually really busy with her new job. But we were talking a little bit about craft in this thing. And Caroline, you actually had a really good story that I would like you to like tell folks here again, kind of about what how craft kind of like changed over there at Ramp for you folks.
Yeah, we're still figuring it out exactly how we're applying craft and where we impart craft, and honestly how we define it too. But there's also the sort of there's a difference between like I think also craft and delight. And so one of the things that we were doing was trying to figure out what delight meant to our customers, as we were having a really hard time to define it and figuring out to place it in the product and where to place it. And we had a designer who went around and did this, talked to customers, and the basic outcome of that was it wasn't, oh, this animation or this sprinkle of like confetti that when I pressed the button or something like that. It was, oh, it knew what I was trying to accomplish and was ahead of it. I was able to get in and get out and do my work very quickly. It was all about the experience and like just getting the work done versus actually like the design of the craft. I think or the delight moment. And I think that's where craft also comes into play. It is not just visuals, it is literally the experience that you're giving to your customers as they're using their product.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the thing that resonated with me in particular about that is like that research, that customer research that was done to like identify what is it that the customers actually want, right? At the bottom line, because yeah, I mean, there is something emotional that you want to attach to stuff that people that will allow people to remember your product and come back to it because of the positive experience that they had. But yeah, it's the question of the definition of what is positive to them. Is positive a matter of the animation or the colors that were used that resonate with them, or is it a matter of did they get the job done efficiently and clearly and all of that stuff? Like there's some balance that certainly happens there, and I think it's certainly interesting from a financial perspective, right? Because in finance it's very like kind of get her done kind of situation. And if all of the products are just like get her done, then how do you stand out as a product? Is it like offering different features? And it's like, well, it's hard to have different features in a regulatory space, I guess, right? Because it's like expectations versus like being able to provide some expressions. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, well, anytime money's moving, that is a critical piece of like infrastructure that you cannot get wrong. And like if somehow like the experience breaks down in that, then customers are going to complain. But I think it's also the fact that um, it's the experience that they had going through your product. How easy was it for them to understand things? How usable was it? Those are the things that really delight customers and like hone in on the craft of what we are doing, especially as product designers and engineers working together to make sure that like while we are so close to the subject matter, we are so close to the product, we sometimes forget that there are people that, especially with a lot of our cardholder customers, that are, it's not the full, finance experience. It's just submitting a receipt or getting a reimbursement. And just, especially if you're traveling and just like getting on and moving on with your day, like those are the experiences where we found that people loved our SMS. They're not even using our app. They're just chatting with SMS. They say that's the best experience because I can just like it just pops up what it needs from me. I text it back and I go on my way.
Hmm. Yeah. And you know what? That's very interesting about the way that I think you're defining craft a little bit in there, and because we've actually had this conversation. I'll give a little bit more context in a minute, but we've had this conversation technically about a year ago. Um, but the thing that I think is really interesting about where you're coming from in this new I guess worldview of craft is it is actually really similar to what my worldview of craft now in terms of like the expertise that we have that we've gained as design engineers in the space to be able to apply it to these experiences to make them better overall. And in
Hmm.
order to do that, there's some creativity that needs to happen. And I think that's the connecting line, is that I think the word craft, I think maybe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the word craft that I think might be being used on your side is potentially the same word that I'm using for creativity on my side. Do you think that might be right?
I think it's creativity and problem solving, I
Okay, yeah.
think.
Hmm.
Right? It's how do you distill a very complex experience to the most simple, or even just like a area of the UI. It's like, oh, we've got, this highly nested complex workings of settings, and we need to be able to get the user to be able to toggle on the right settings at the right time in the way that they understand it. Like distilling that down into very simple, but not over indexing on like cleverness.
Hmm.
I One of the things that I like say over and over again is clarity over cleverness.
Mm.
And it's always about like, yes, you could maybe simplify that down to where it's like one toggles on this other one, but then if you toggle it off, then you get three other options. It's like that's a little too clever,
Hmm.
and it takes more um, cognitive load to understand what's going on based on interactions.
Hmm.
If you just displayed yes, six full toggles may feel overwhelming at first, but they will understand what they do if
Right.
they see everything at once.
Yeah. No, I 100% align with that, and that is specifically because I had a talk that I did at. I talk about this all the time, but I had a talk that I did at Converge last year, and it was called "Creativity Within Constraints," and the whole, I guess, thesis of the talk effectively was that people say that design systems are killing creativity, right? Because there's too many restrictions. I don't know. I can't do what I want to do, et cetera, et cetera. And my argument to that in particular was, well, if you can't use the design system, you yourself aren't creative enough to figure out how to use the pieces to solve your problem. It was very much like, from me, like growing up with MacGyver for years, basically being like, okay, I have this box that I need to get myself out of. How do I use the stuff around me to effectively get out of the box, right? Do I use the paper clip and the rubber band and all that stuff? And the thing is that as far as I'm concerned, folks that are maintaining design systems, we're trying to build the pieces that you will most likely need. But
Mm-hmm.
exactly what you're saying, there's people that are finding themselves to be very clever and inventing things that are effectively outside the system to solve problems that could have been solved with pieces if they were creative enough, right, to problem solve with the stuff that we were given them. So, what do you think about this one?
I think maybe saying they're not creative enough might be a little harsh, but I
Sure,
hear
sure.
what you're saying. But I think there's a couple issues when it comes to that. I think one is most likely discoverability. We as systems maintainers know our system in and out. We
Right.
know every possible configuration. We know every possible component. But I can understand that our consumers don't. But I think that's a place where I think collaboration with those builders is better than, or like them asking us, like, how can we, like, during our office hours, we would get these kinds of questions all the time. It's like, oh, we're just in this like really highly complex like problem. Do we have something that can solve this? It's usually not. We have a single component that can do this thing, but here are a couple options that we have, and they're like, oh, I didn't know that existed, or I didn't know it could do that. And I think it's just learning those, and like over time, as 1, 2 years later, that consumer is going to know a lot more about the system and what the capabilities are, and they will be just as good or just as creative people who use the system.
Yeah. Now, here's another maybe wrench in for the whole thing. Would the problem be if the team member doesn't know what the design system has? Is it possible that the design system, the component library, has too much stuff?
Oh, for
Do
sure.
we end up in a situation where it's like a Hicks law and they're like, crap, there's too much stuff here. I don't know what to even start choosing, so I'm just gonna go with what I know and build it myself in this kind of like space.
100%. a
Yeah.
100%. That's why, like, honestly, I think our current library is like 200 components.
Oh my
That
God.
is too much.
Yeah.
And you're talking, I mean, not just components, that's like not even talking about the variants of those components. And
Okay.
the entire
Wow.
ethos of our evolution now is this idea of paring down. We want to over index on the primitives, buttons, input, text, the things that like really just are the foundational pieces in
Hmm.
those components. And then the other side of that is here are a bunch of patterns.
Hmm.
They're copy pastable code of how you can compose these. So we're just like saying everything is composable. You can
Right.
compose and build anything you need, but don't think like just because your version is maybe repeated a couple times that it needs to become a component.
Right.
It could be like in the product itself, the way the engineers are building it, they're like, oh, well, we don't want to have to replicate this composed thing 5 times. Great, make that an exportable component and others can use that, but doesn't need to be in this system.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that, and it's something that I tried to do early on as well. But the thing that I had difficulty with in the systems that I've worked with larger corporations is that when you pare it all down, then you get the go back to the design system skill creativity, and I don't know how to use this because it doesn't have the thing that I want, right? And it's like this
Mm,
balance between, okay, there's too much stuff, right? And
the
then
catch
there's
22.
not enough stuff. And the I think the other problem ends up being is that because we're working with these individuals and these individuals have their individual expectations, some of these folks are looking for lots of components slash patterns, and other folks are, overwhelmed by the stuff and are only looking for a few things, right? So how could we, you know, I'm putting you on your spot a little bit, but how could we like balance that, do you think? What are you thinking?
I honestly truly think that it's having a very robust library of patterns.
Mm,
It's just examples. It's a whole lot of examples of known use cases, common use cases, copy pastable code that like other people can use, or it's a insertable thing in Figma or something like that, whatever design tool you're using these days. And like that way, those things are not like if they evolved, it's not necessarily also hindering any consumers down the line, right? You can change them, and those patterns can change, and then only if you deem this okay, no, now we need to be really consistent across the application with this pattern. I mean, the nice thing is AI makes that a lot easier these days. You can tell
yeah.
it, go look for this pattern and replace it with this, and you just go let it run for an hour, and it does that work for you. So I don't think we need to be over indexing on these highly complex components that do a lot of different things, but only a few things really well, right? It's like you have 14 props on a component, but only like 3 of them work together very well.
Mm.
Or if you add in that fourth one, the whole thing breaks. Those components have to go.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And I think the interest, and you bring up the AI piece. I wanted to bring that up too in here because, you know, I
You
guess
have to.
yeah, well, of course, yeah,
Doing it.
it's on the docket, right? Our sponsors are going to have a problem if we don't, which we have none of. But the question about the AI piece is that okay? Well, do you even need patterns effectively like we would traditionally do? If you could just effectively have this stuff documented for AI's purposes such that our team members who are vibing all over the place can actually just align with the rules that we've set up in the system, right? So this is that going to work, do you think? Yeah.
It's a combination.
Yeah.
Because I, as much as I do think there's a lot of conversations around, oh, well, design systems are only being used by AI these days. Yes and no, because what I found still working within a system with AI is that the more I can describe exactly what I want it to use, like exact component or the exact configuration, it's a lot easier.
Mm,
Like it's going to produce better results than me just sort of generally explaining it and then it trying to figure it out. So I
hmm.
still think there's a good use case or strong case for consumers to at least understand the library and what the library contains and what it can do. And so that's why patterns and documentation are still for the humans. And then we have like LLM docs that are just in the repository and that are accessed via our MCP
Hmm.
that it can read
Hmm.
against and to know those more hardline rules.
Yeah. Now, I want to go back to something you were saying earlier about having so much stuff, right? Because what you were talking about you get better results by being more specific and more specific. Well, doesn't it? Don't you need to know about the things in order to be specific to get those better results, right? So, is there some way of like recognizing that these folks largely don't know what's available and largely are going to need some help in working with AI because that's what's happening these days. Where how could we meet it in the middle where like you can provide something generic, but maybe there's like some sort of system prompt harness MCP something of that nature that says, oh, this person probably means these things that are a part of the system versus having requiring to be, because otherwise you're just going to get like bootstrap tailwind chat
Yeah.
cn at the other end. So have you experimented with that at all, or
I mean, what we're doing now is we do have like kind of our own agent that
oh,
understands our component library,
awesome.
and we have an ask our library is called Ryu off of the Street Fighter character, and so we have an
Hey,
Ask Ryu
okay.
kind of little chat, which does connect into the MCP. It can read the docs, and so it's becoming a lot easier to learn the system and learn what the availability is versus you having to like click through all of the pages or search for certain components. Because also it's like namings can be very different when you're transferring from company to company and going from library to library.
Yeah.
You know, I can't tell you how many times. So we have the a badge component, right, which is just your kind of solid color with text on it giving you status or something. Everybody's calling it badge or chip or status badge, or like all these different names. And like it kind of at this point doesn't matter. We can give some keywords to the LLM, say like if they say chip, this is what they mean, right? And so now it's a lot easier for them to sort of again describe, but in some manner of uh, um, confidence of what they're talking about in terms of componentry, but it that the LLM will know exactly how that maps to the component library.
Yeah. It's speaking about the chip situation. I'm very aware of that in particular because I have a blog post that's basically saying let's not do any of those anymore, because it gets even confusing to users. And one of the larger, I guess, offenders is Atlassian because they have different versions, but what makes it a little bit more challenging is that they actually have reasons for the different versions, even though they are all very visually similar. And I can imagine it making it very challenging to
Mm-hmm.
know which one to choose, and then even for the user to know why is it ever so slightly different from this other one, why isn't it just the same one in the first place, it's yeah, so like the bottom line for me is just get rid of the entire pattern overall. I mean, it goes back to exactly what I was saying earlier about just being like reduce, 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 and only have
Yeah.
a few
Yeah.
available. But you get rid of the whole pattern, so you don't have a problem with the naming problem. You don't have a problem with the users not knowing if you can click it or not. It's like Schrodinger's button, you know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can't tell. We had to literally have very different variants for ones that are clickable versus ones that are static, and we made it very hardline rules. The static one can never have interactivity because, like you said, how do I'm going to click on this thing if it doesn't do anything, but like this time, but I saw it do something before, I'm going to think it's a bug, right? I'm not going to think, oh, this time it's just doesn't have any interactivity. It definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I could go on about that
Oh
one.
yeah, let's just we'll make another episode just talking about how much we hate that particular pattern, and
Yeah.
that should be an hour's worth of talking. I'm sure that's totally fine. Um, let's change back a little bit to the craft discussion
Yeah.
a little bit because I mentioned earlier in the episode about our conversation a year ago about craft, and I want to bring that up a little bit for the folks here because I think it's going to be interesting because you folks were hiring for a design engineer role on your team. And I, knowing again your glowing review that I gave you earlier, I was like, oh, I would love to work with Caroline. That would be awesome. I was like, let me throw my hat in the ring and see what happens. And I remember in the job posting it talking about craft, and I was like, okay, there's a facet in there that needs to be addressed certainly. But I've been doing design systems for a long time. I've titled myself design engineer in the generality of the practice. So I'm like, yes, that's it's going to be the normal job that I'm familiar with, and I can't imagine it. Um, all that different. But I recognized in the process about how much craft was a part of the hiring that you were really trying to focus on. And that ended up at a situation where I'll say we both recognized that it was a mismatch for us at the time,
Yeah.
right? And just from my perspective of the thing, I remember saying to you about how I don't really focus on the craft as the definition was in my head, right? As the definition of my head basically saying, okay, well, I want to have some flowy animation here, or I want to round the corners on this to make it feel this way or feel that way. I want to have a gradient here to feel this way. And that was the definition of craft that I was coming into in there. And I think, talking about the um, story that you had about trying to find out what craft meant for the company, I think that's basically what we I think was being assessed back then, which was how would you elevate this experience from an emotional kind of perspective rather than the functional perspective? Because even in some of I won't go into too much detail about the actual interviews, but in the assessment, we're trying basically given here's a functional, thing. How would you introduce your own craft into this thing, right? And I personally was a little confused because I'm like, this works. What else do you need from me? It's working totally fine. And that's when we kind of both realized, like, okay, we're kind of, you know, looking for a different thing at this point. And again, we're talking now, so there's obviously no hard feelings
Oh
across
yeah.
the board right here about what ended up there. But it's kind of a story that I want to share because you have to, I think, for the folks out there looking for roles and being disheartened and stuff like that, there's situations out there where even in the conversation it isn't a fit. It's just a
Yeah.
mismatch in there, and it takes some experience to recognize that from both parties, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not just a one-sided, the person who's hiring is like, oh, I know exactly what the problem is, and the other person like doesn't, or vice versa. Because I've been in situations. I mean, I'm gonna throw it out here. I know I'm talking a lot here, but because I'm very passionate about it. But I interviewed with Figma a few years back, and that interview was also a mismatch because we were looking for design systems folks, and they reached out to me later and said, "Hey, we're in the we have you in our candidate pool. Do you want to talk again?" And I told them, I said, "Look, we can talk, but if you can't assess me properly, then let's not go forward, right?" And they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I told them the story about what happened, where basically they gave me a test that was more like full stack engineer, and it wasn't like design
Oh.
engineer, right? It was like
Mm,
a mismatch there.
mm-hmm.
So I told him, I said, if you're not able to assess me as a design engineer, then let's not do this. They got
Yeah.
back to me and they said, actually, yeah, we're unable to assess you properly. And I was thankful for that, of course, that they recognized that, but also was like, wait a minute, how could you, Figma, not be able to assess design engineering? Like, aren't you supposed to be like the foundational part, especially with all the stuff that we saw from Kid Fig last week?
Yeah.
It's just like, how could you possibly not be able to assess? But it's just, So anyway, that's the story that I wanted to kind of put in there. What is your perspective from that conversation that we had back then?
Yeah, and for context, the interview was a like design code challenge.
Yeah.
So it was applying design thinking to existing code. And the whole idea with that was that it was twofold. It's we need to make sure that you can also be a product thinker when need be, right?
Hmm.
We're all building towards a product, even though we are hiring directly into a system. It's like we still need to be able to know how all those pieces can fit together to drive an actual experience. And so for this, it was like, can you be a product thinker and prioritize things that would make an experience better, but also like to be honest, like in honesty, like the challenges presented has issues, has visual issues,
Hmm.
design issues,
Hmm.
and we're like, we want to see you rip this thing apart. Like, tell us how bad it is and tell us how you would improve it. Um, but then also like what would you prioritize of those things? Because sometimes if you're thinking too surface level, it's like, okay, well, but what about this functionality that's super broken? Or and so there's like a lot of different aspects to it. And then there's also like, well, but can you also apply this directly to code? Like we're not asking you to be a full stack and engineer where you have to build this from scratch. No, no, I don't. I've been working as an engineer for almost 20 years. I still get like super messed up by environments and setting up like brand
Hmm.
new repositories and brand new applications. I don't want to sit for half an hour hoping that another design engineer can get that right. So, um, anyways, yeah, we just want to make sure that you can apply that design thinking and that level of craft and the care, because like this is where I think the definition of craft really comes in. It's the level of care and intention you put to your work and the quality of work that you output. Um, because craft in general sense, I think has a lot of bias around like what is good and what is bad, sort of like art, right? And so, like the ability to, if you put a lot of intention and you put a lot of care and quality into it, then you're more likely to produce good craft and good quality.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So great feedback for my interview. um, so the I guess the feedback that I returned for that was I remember in the interview that I was calling out a lot of like accessibility things, right? And I remember the folks like in the room basically directing and saying, "Yeah, let's not do that. Let's do this instead." And I guess I was probably like taken aback in there because that's part of what we're talking about. My expertise and my craft is like, hey, here's some accessibility things that we might
Yeah,
want to bring up. And again, it's that mismatch of going, well, that's not what we want to focus on right now,
right
right?
now. Yeah,
Exactly. So there's opportunities, of course, because I'm sure asking you, is accessibility important? You will absolutely say yes, of course it is. But in the grand scheme of prioritizing products and getting them in front of course, stakeholders out there,
yeah,
it's this is the thing that I think was being focused on for this particular, I guess, assessment. Is that accurate? Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, that's what I'm basically, I guess, gleaning from a little bit of this is this again. You out there have expertises, and you have to find the people who are looking for your expertise. So that's effectively what has to happen. It's. I mean, I know everyone says it's like dating, but it's really just like finding matches, right? You're just finding a
Yeah,
match that resonates at the time, and I guess speaking about dating, unfortunately, my wife always says that even the right person at the wrong time is wrong, effectively. Like, you could be the perfect person for that person, but if the timing is off, it won't work, right? And I do agree with that in terms of talking about the relationships, because if we met 7 years ago, before we actually did met, we were in two different places, right? We were totally different kinds of individuals. But that could come back around, which it kind of did for us, I suppose. You in actual practice, it could really work out in the right time, right? To put those people together. So it's never burn a bridge, I'd say, right? Does that make
yeah,
sense? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I do agree. I think when like companies and employees, there is a relationship for sure as well. It's like, and when you, I think it's extremely important to be on the same page and knowing the expectations of that job and knowing that the other person can fill those expectations. And the only way to eke that out is to like literally have those honest conversations and honest, like, do you know this stuff and do you care about it? Like, it took us a really long time to hire for that position. I
Hmm.
think that position was open for like 6 months or something like that.
Wow.
And we were constantly interviewing. It's the a culmination of a design engineer. So like has like basically 50-50 equal parts in being able to apply design principles in code, but also being in this, wanting to do the systems work, like
Hmm.
to have the love documentation, love building and organizing things, and love usability and love accessibility, like all those things accumulating into one person is actually very difficult to find.
100%. Yeah, it's the unicorn. We talk about this all
Yeah.
the time, right? It's that unicorn position that you want to have all that expertise, and design engineers generally are that. Like that's effectively what the role ends up being, is you have, some percentage of design, some percentage of engineering, and some percentage of accessibility, some percentage of content design, it's just like so many percentages, so that you can be the glue that holds a product together as something that could be delivered for things. Because otherwise, you have a whole bunch of people that are miscommunicating all the time, because you have some intention on the design side that gets miscommunicated as an engineering side. Like, the classic example of like a designer saying, oh, this is supposed to be 720 pixels wide, so then the engineer codes it very specifically as 720 pixels width, and then all of a sudden people are like, well, why is this breaking? Well, it's because you hard coded the width, right? It's
Hmm.
supposed to be responsive. It's not supposed to be 720. It's just because the artboard isn't responsive, and therefore we couldn't translate it. It's like, again, the problem of the tools that we always have.
Yeah, and maybe something that's a little bit different with the way that we operate, which is a little bit more on a contribution model. So we're never trying to stand in the way of people getting work done, but we are the quality maintainers. Like anything coming and flowing through the system, we go through our checks. So while we don't have to implement your work or what you need, you can send us a PR, but we're going to be the final ones who get it over the line to make sure it's internationalized and localized and like has accessibility, but also like meets our brand standards. And that's why the craft piece was like really important in this last hiring round, because of all these complexity of components that we have now. We're starting to look at, okay, how do we even just elevate the design language? How do we elevate the moments and the micro interactions? And that's sort of why we were like, okay, let's concentrate on a lot of that feedback that's coming to the system and start applying those in ways that we can. um but yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about that feedback part,
Mm,
because certainly feedback is a facet of how design systems people work, to determine like what is priority, right? So how do you gather feedback on this stuff in your system over in Ramp?
yeah. It's very casual. We don't do like ticket systems, but like feedback is generally just through Slack. Um, I wish we got more positive feedback, but no,
Mm,
like it's usually pretty good. It's usually, for me, to be honest, I think um, people tend to be noisy on things that don't work.
right.
They don't usually aren't super noisy on things that do, because that's just an expectation, right? They're not going to be like congratulating you on the expectations of the system just doing its job. So, but at the same time, like we do know that there's a lot of requests that come in just for like small little variants or bug reporting and things like that. We also, while the system itself was built primarily for our web app, we now have, I don't know, probably like 20 some repos that are now internally using the system as well. So we
Mm,
have even more consumers outside of just building the product. And I think that's a testament to its effectiveness and how much care has gone into the componentry that we build. And the complexity also leans into that as well, because it's highly configurable. Like you can get what you need out of it. You're not having to recreate a custom select. You're not having to recreate a lot of these patterns that aren't HTML native. All of that is built in. So that's the way I sort of glean feedback is people are using it, people are liking it, people want to reach for it because it's easy.
yeah, yeah. Now, do you also find? I'm assuming this is yes, but do you also find, you know that people are still just building their own stuff? Is that something that you're seeing over there?
Um, they're not building stuff, but they are definitely reaching beyond the system and trying to find new patterns that are trying new ways to represent, large swaths of data or things like that. And in that regard, a lot of times we're like, go do what you need to do. Come
Mm,
tell us if it's working. Like, if you think that this is actually a better pattern than what we have established, let's work on that to make that, promote that to the system.
mhm. Is it so? It's like basically like an empowerment situation, right? Yeah, because I align with that because that's what informs the system effectively, right? Is just like, what are the people doing out there? What, and finding out what they do is a matter of them making their own stuff effectively, and then hopefully getting some feedback. And you were talking about the negative thing being louder than the positive, certainly. Um, but like, I guess, how are you? Did I ask this already? I'm not sure. How are you finding patterns? I guess I asked if they were happening. Now I'm going to ask you, how are you finding these patterns? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have a really good QA environment. And so a lot of times when we're testing components and things like that, we're kind of just surfing, or like we are very much a Slack culture. And so a lot of things are just posted. We do, our designers are doing a lot of video walkthroughs and things like that. So we're just sort of catching an eye. And then sometimes it's more of an engineer you're saying like, hey, I saw this in my designer's, mocks. Does this exist? And we're like, no, I've not seen this before. And they'll be like, oh, well, it exists here and here too. Like, oh, we didn't realize that, designers are copying and pasting from other designers.
Mm.
And so we say, okay, does it make sense that we want to then promote that as a first class citizen and make it a real system component? Sometimes it doesn't make sense, and sometimes like that might be data model heavy. Maybe
Mm.
that stays in product. Or we say, well, it's actually super close to this other component we have. Can we retrofit that new version into the old one and then actually update everybody else's as well? So we are always looking for those kinds of opportunities. It is getting harder these days because the product is getting more complex and a lot larger. But that's where, again, I'm wondering if that's necessarily the new thing to be doing. Like, we want to be reducing. So are we just saying this is an official pattern, but there's no componentry or there's nothing like coming out of the system for it besides maybe a documentation page?
Right, because everything's moving so fast, right? So you could only catch up so much, and do what you can to say, okay, this exists, so other people can potentially see it, use it, and
Yeah.
you can have it kind of organically grow into a component because it's been copied over a couple of times, and you can identify and go, okay, well, this is a thing. It's a thing.
Yeah.
We're gonna go ahead and make it a real thing, I suppose. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that sounds reasonable for sure. I mean, because yeah, I'm you see all of it. I mean, from my side, the situation is absolutely 100% lots of vibe coding happening. And in fact, when I was working directly on the team that was doing much of the larger project that's revolving around that, I knew going into that team, I was like, they're not going to want this system. They're going to be wanting to just go ahead and go fast, break things. And any point in time where we're like, oh, please use the system, they're going to go, ah, we already put it in, and then it was gone the following week. Like, it's just like it's a new idea that comes up. So like, it's wild because I don't know if you've seen it, but there's been so much talk in the practice in the community about the importance of design systems and AI. Okay,
Hmm.
where people are like, saying, "Oh, I've generated a design system. I have a design MD, et cetera, et cetera." Like, there's a lot of chatter about the design systems in there, but in the actual large organizations or even medium organizations, what I'm really hearing from the ICs is that not a lot of people are using the system because it's moving so fast. Are you hearing anything similar?
There's definitely been some, I think, tension on the different variables and speed of product development and system development. And I
Mm,
think those still exist today. We are, but it's like, the system was moving, I don't know, left or right. System was moving like this slow, and the product was moving this slow. And now everything's moved faster, but we've all just sort of moved a little bit like this. So we're still slower, but everybody's still faster, right? It's like, so it's hard to say like that, with the movement of AI that we're supposed to be as accelerated as product development, or that we could just scrap the whole thing and let AI figure it out. I don't think those are rooted in reality, because we've seen, like, if you do start with just a design.md, or just a very baseline idea of what a markdown file for a design system is, it might be okay in that first 1 or 2 pages,
Hmm.
but you get really complex down the line, and you have to make more and more and establish more and more patterns or different like ways to make new components or whatever, however it's being built. It's going to go way off of that pattern. It's going to go way off that design MD file.
Right.
It's going to go beyond it. It's going to stop referencing it. It might still use the colors, but it's like, it's not enough. It's
Right.
not a system in itself.
Right. Yeah. That's been my feedback about the Design MD file as well, because one of the I think Design MD was a great marketing scheme at best. Right. It was just like a great, like, oh, Google's got this Design MD. It's open source. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, folks, this is just a markdown file with some design tokens and
Yeah.
a couple of paragraphs. Like, I don't understand why the entire community is going like gaga over this. When we in the design system space have full documentation sites, right, with do's and don'ts that are like, visual. We have components with storybook and knobs that are making it so it's visual, and all of this stuff that's like really capturing the agreement of an organization. And you think that the one file that is just you and your opinions with Claude is a design system is just like so belittling. I think.
Yeah, and especially, and I love the fact that you brought out the do's and don'ts. Like, you can codify that 100%. But the thing is all of those came out of real situations. Usually, you come into a spot where someone is trying to do something that the component can or can't handle. Like, these do's and don'ts were rooted in real use cases. If you don't have that in your design.md, then it's not going to understand that there are rules to whatever you're making.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing I'm seeing too, in the research that I'm doing with the AI work, is just like, if you were going to try to put your entire design system documentation into the Design MD, that's of course the wrong way of doing it, because then you blow up your context, right? So if you end up going ahead and shoving all this stuff, you're going to ruin all of your tokens. It's going to go into the
Oh, yeah.
stupid zone, right? So just like, there's so much in there that isn't being talked about, that is expecting greatness and being just like, thinking that it's the best thing on earth, when in reality, just there's so many foot guns that if you just took a second and thought about it, you go, wait a minute, there's more that we should be doing here, and it's not just like design MDs and rainbows. you know
And I can bet you too that even if you started with that, let's say you're starting from scratch and that's all you have, great, that's fine. As you are more vibe coding or whatever, you're using an agent to help you build an application, the more complex the application gets, and I haven't tested this for sure, but my guess is that that agent, an LM, is going to start generating components.
hmm
It's basically going to build the system for you. So the design MD is just a foundational, like, contract
right.
of, this is our style guide. Now go build the system.
Yeah.
It cannot be the encompassing of the system.
Yeah. All right, so here's a curveball for you, since we're talking about craft and now we're talking about AI. Do you think craft is something that AI could do?
Oof. My honest take is no, unless I no. It's pretty much a solid no, and I think it's mainly because AI is trained.
hmm
It is not. I haven't found it to be a creative problem solver or to be able to generate anything creatively. outside of what I have given it as like inspiration or what it's been looking at, in its view of the world. So I think only humans really have that ability to think out of the box and think creatively. That's why most of my actual worry here of using AI, at least in product development, is using it as a product thinker. I, it's just going to spit back to you what everybody else is doing. I don't think you're going to get anything new out of, using it as a thought partner. And so as it applies to craft, I, it could do it with my instruction to telling it and to guiding it and telling it what to do and what the output I want is. Sure. Will it figure that out on the onset if I give it the most vaguest prompt? I don't think so.
Yeah. So, well, in that case, can you teach craft? Right? Like, I mean, that's the thing is where does the craft come from? Right? I mean, is the where do we? I mean, not necessarily to even teach the LLM necessarily, because why would we want to ever do that? But even for people, right? Like
Oh,
for people, how would you teach craft to people? Is it just a matter of experience and getting them to be shown things in the world and have opinions about it, or where does that come from?
I absolutely think you can.
Okay.
But the foundational piece that will allow that to happen is that the person cares and wants to learn. Because I think if they're pushed to think more crafty or whatever that is, but they don't actually care about it, they're just like, well, just tell me what the answer is for this thing. Then no, they're just going to kind of like output again what someone else is telling them, and maybe they'll learn a few patterns to establish and to reuse. But if they really care and they really are diving into the whys and hows, then yeah, I think you can.
I love that. I truly mean this, because like the wanting to care being one of the defining factors, if not the defining factor, of the craft is so interesting. Because yeah, why would, like, separating the people from the agents, why would an agent care? All it's trying to do is get to a goal. They don't know anything about the goal necessarily. They're just trying to achieve some reward at the end, right? They don't really care about the overarching, platform or environment. They're just like, I got to do this one thing and get it done. But
Yeah.
for a person to care, they're going to go deep, they're going to go wide, right? They're going to be doing a lot more than just the here's the goal I got to, right? And I think there's really a great point here as we see people who are relying more and more on LLMs and on vibe coding that are obviously just getting to an output. And we're probably seeing, unfortunately, a lot less caring, legitimately, right? And I don't want to say this necessarily as a blanket statement, but I do
Yeah.
think that generally speaking, I think I'm seeing that a lot from, like, hey, I want to solve this this one problem that I have, but and so I'm going to do specifically that one problem and solve that, and I don't really care about the other problems right now. Like, I'm just caring about my one problem. And I think that's why I'm seeing a lot of toe stepping that's happening, where people are like, I did this thing last week and then that my code is gone because somebody else did something different, right? And they kind of like almost, hate to say, don't care what the other person did because I'm going to do it my way. So I love that comment about care in this craft discussion. I think that's such a great point.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, let's say it's just like a self-guided prototype or whatever app that you're building and or site. And if people are saying, "Oh, there's not a lot of craft or you didn't care," I mean, like, I just feel like if if you cared, you would continue to make that site better, right? You would continue prompting, or you would figure out ways to get to a level of craft that you intended. But if you kind of stop at that middle ground, like, okay, it's done, I think that just already shows that you don't that there's no level of care.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like it's the done versus perfect, right? So it's trying
Yeah.
to get to that perfect scenario, and you have to care to be perfect, if you can ever attain it, I suppose. I mean, I guess yeah, it's just a matter of the getting to perfect is the part of the journey, and that journey you're going to learn the craft because you care. I think is
Yeah.
good, right? Yeah.
100%. And that's honestly, that's how a lot of, I think, design engineers got into being design engineers. It was because we have this vision of how the design should be, but we've worked with an engineering partner who is just kind of like, well, here it is. And you're like, but it's, I don't want to have to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and telling you, oh, nudge this thing and nudge that thing. But I'm just going to figure out and learn the code, and I'm going to get in there. I'm going to, oh, I see that pixel value, but it says 8, but I wanted 12. Great. I'm just going to go change it. Oh, now I want to change some logic. And now I want to, and you get like more complex and more complex in the engineering space. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm literally not even touching these design tools anymore. I'm just designing in browser.
Bingo. That's great. And you know what? What a great thought to end on for this show. I think this was wonderful. So before we wrap up here, so Caroline, I know you said you didn't have anything to plug, but I want you to again, let the people know where to find you out there in the internet because, like I said, I think you have a lot of great things to share. I was poking you on potentially trying to make a blog at some point,
I know. I need to.
So
I need to.
yeah, so I definitely recommend that you get your stuff out there because, like I said earlier at the top of the show, I really do believe that Caroline's thought process is really well thoughtful. Just to be very very specific, or not specific. I don't even know what the words I'm saying right now.
It's late. It's getting late.
Yeah, yeah, I guess that's what it is. But yeah, Caroline, go ahead and kind of let the people know where to find you on the internet and where they are, where you are there.
Yeah, I mean, my handle everywhere is Curious Chaos. On Blue Sky, it's curiouschaos.com. Someone spelled the regular Curious Chaos, but it's curiouschaos.com. And that's my website as well. It also has all of my links at the bottom of the page. There is specifically a page that I have been curating on my site, which is honestly just a lot of link outs.
Hmm.
I used um, Raindrop to kind of culminate all my bookmarks and things and into different categories. So you can see all the different categories and link out a lot of system stuff, a lot of like front end stuff as well. So that's kind of a helpful resource. Yeah.
Super. Okay. Thank you very much. So yeah, thank you, Caroline, for being on the show. I really
No,
appreciate
thank
it.
you so much for having me.
And thank you for watching. Before you go, please help out the show by smashing the like and subscribe button to just get notified next time we go live. And feel free to continue the conversation on the official Design Systems Discord at discord.ds.house. There it is on the bottom right there. Play nice in those comments, and I'll see you on the internet. Bye.